Good morning, everyone. My name is Lorraine Cunningham, and I'd like to welcome you to TransLink's March 2023 Open Board meeting. Thank you all for joining us today virtually. At this time, I'd like to call our meeting to order, and I'd like to start by saying that we respect the Indigenous nations within Metro Vancouver and acknowledge all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their continued resilience, sustainability, sustainable stewardship, and as active members of the community for generations to come. We recognize that in planning and managing the region's transportation system, we have a role to play in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. It's now my pleasure to welcome two new board members to our board for 2023 and onward. I'd like to first congratulate Tracy Reddies, President and CEO of Science World. Tracy has over 25 years of experience as a high-growth organizational leader with strong commitment to serving the province and its communities. Among her other accomplishments, she has served as the CEO of Coast Capital Savings Credit Union, Executive Vice President and Head of Personal Financial Services at HSBC Canada, and as BC Liberal MLA for Surrey White Rock as a finance critic for the opposition. I'd also like to congratulate Alan Seckel, Chair of the BC Housing Commission and Vice Chair of Legal Aid BC, who will also be joining our board this year. Alan is a lawyer by profession and has a career that has spanned private practice, public service, and not-for-profit sector. He has served as the Deputy Attorney General for British Columbia as Cabinet Secretary, Head of Public Service, and Deputy Minister to the Honourable Gordon Campbell, Premier of BC. Most recently, Alan has been the CEO of Doctors BC. Alan and Tracy have joined our board as new directors as of January 1st, and we look forward to their contributions for this year and onward. So I'd like to move now to the agenda, and I want to introduce Jennifer Chan, who's one of our board members, and she is going to present today's safety moment. So Jen.
Great, thank you, Chair. For today's Safety Minute, I'd like to draw from TransLink's in-house Courageous Conversations program, which this month involved employee discussions about creating psychological safety. So what is psychological safety? There are different aspects to it, but one definition describes it as including the belief that each of us can speak up without the risk of punishment, humiliation, or exclusion. And there's been a lot written about how psychological safety is critical for our sense of well-being and for healthier workplace environments. It's also critical to the high-quality decision-making and innovation that we count on as an organization. So here's how Amy Edmondson put it. With so much riding on innovation, creativity, and spark, it's essential to attract and retain quality talent. But what good does that talent do if no one is able to speak their mind? Success requires a continuous influx of new ideas, new challenges, and critical thought, and the interpersonal climate must not suppress, silence, ridicule, or intimidate. So breaking that down, psychological safety means feeling like we can speak up, that we feel included enough, that it's safe to contribute, it's safe to challenge the status quo, and to offer each of our diverse perspectives. It's okay to disagree, and it's safe to learn and change your mind. So my appreciation goes to TransLink staff who are thinking about ways to support a culture of psychological safety and inclusion, and to everyone on the team who took on this topic during this month's Courageous Conversations discussions at TransLink. Thank you.
Jen, thank you very much for that. So we have lots on our agenda. So I'd like to move to our public delegations. Now we have 4 speakers today with us. I believe we're going to have 4. But before they get started, I just want to thank them for preparing to come to speak to the board. We really appreciate the time that it takes to do the preparation and to go through the process to come and speak. And it's important for the board to hear from you. So with that, I'd like to move to our first delegate, which is Chloe Rowett. So is Chloe here to speak to us?
Hello.
Hello, Chloe. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, all. My name is Chloe Rowett. I'm speaking to you today to discuss an event that took place earlier this year, back on Thursday, January 12th. This event took place on a Canada Line SkyTrain platform and involved a person who is a power wheelchair user and their dog. On this day, this person was separated from this service animal while boarding the train, leaving their dog behind on the platform, where it was dragged by the leash across the platform and was eventually thrown into the tunnels where it remained for over an hour before being retrieved. I'm sure I do not need to inform you of the repercussions this incident had on TransLink employees, TransLink patrons, and their commutes that day. However, what may be lesser known is how this incident has affected not only the physical, but also the emotional safety of disabled TransLink passengers. I hope that by speaking here today in front of those who have been given the ability to create positive changes for all passengers, that emphasis and resources can be pointed towards creating a better and safer future for all TransLink patrons, with an emphasis on doing so by making service more equitable for people with disabilities. At a first glance, the incident that happened on January 12th may seem like a horrific freak accident, and while it should be noted that thankfully the dog survived, this does not mean that the terrible circumstances were without severe losses. In the aftermath of the accident, TransLink users took to social media platforms, including Twitter and Reddit, to air their frustrations about the disruptions to their commute. What also followed was an onslaught of hatred towards the wheelchair user. In several Reddit posts, users of the r/Vancouver subreddit commented on how this individual rushed onto the train and should be fined for disrupting service. Others argued about the validity of the wheelchair user's dog and whether or not this dog was a service animal. At first, I was surprised by this misdirected anguish, especially when I read more hostile and violent calls to action, some of which included verbally bullying language hurled towards individuals for not following TransLink's rules surrounding pet ownership. What may have also amplified this, though, was how the verified accounts for BC Transit Police responded on both Reddit and Twitter, quoting on the former that the dog was not a certified service dog. On Twitter, one person replied to BC Transit Police's post about the dog Masha's retrieval and asked, how can TransLink make it safer for service dogs? To which BC Transit Police answered, quote, Masha is not a certified service dog. This response fails to answer a very important question. How can TransLink make it safer? Safety is considered a top concern for TransLink, according to its own website. On the web page entitled Accessing Public Transit, there is no confirmation that a guide or service dog must meet certain certification requirements. And as my experience of an educator for over 10 years for children and adults with disabilities, I know that service and guide dogs do not need to be certified under BC Guide Dog and Service Dog Act in order to be considered a valid one. Certification also does not include therapy or emotional support animals, and as these animals can serve different functions for different needs, it would be difficult to enforce this without discriminating against people with disabilities and without disrupting their commute times. TransLink is a world-class leader in its transportation services to the public, which means that it has the opportunity to continue to lead the rest of the world towards a safer future for people with disabilities. While there are accessibility options listed on the website, there are several ways that service can be improved. Number one being that the transit service alerts are often non-functioning for those seeking up-to-date information about elevator closures, making specific trains for pets or for wheels, including bikes, wheelchairs, strollers, and grocery carts, making instructions clearer for able-bodied passengers to be good patrons to those with disabilities, and in addition, having designated TransLink employees that are on platforms to ensure safe boarding and exiting of trains to direct other passengers to be aware of their surroundings. Thank you for your time.
Chloe, thank you very much for taking the time. And I appreciate some of the recommendations that you've put forward. There is someone from the TransLink team that will be contacting you to follow up with kind of a dialogue to work through this a little bit further. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to move now to Nathan Devadovich. So Nathan, I think you're in the waiting room and you can join us. Nathan, are you there? Nathan? I think you're on mute. Perhaps you can take yourself off mute. Nathan, can you hear me? So Jennifer, is there anybody else in the waiting room? I think Nathan might be having some technical difficulties.
Chair, we don't have any other public delegates at this
Oh,
time.
wait a minute.
Hello?
I see. Oh, hello, Nathan.
Oh,
Welcome.
you hear me now?
Yeah, we
Oh.
can hear you now. Yeah, you've come off mute.
Okay,
So
thank
welcome.
you very much.
So Nathan,
Chair,
you
and-
have, thank you for coming, and you have 5 minutes. So we look forward to your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
The present fare system is unfair. It was illegally implemented in 1984 without proper consultation with the public or municipalities. The judge in 1986 ruled that the Attorney General should investigate, but nothing was done. The three-zone system is particularly unfair for riders in Zone 1 and 2. No other transit system in Canada has such a complicated, unfair fare structure. On the average, Vancouver has the highest fares in Canada. For seniors like myself who do not receive the guarantee annual income, it is particularly way more expensive compared to, let's say, Alberta. Here is what the seniors pay per year in Alberta. In Calgary, it's $150 a year. In Edmonton, it's $385, and for low-income seniors, it's free. In Vancouver, it's $58.60 per month now, going up to $59.95. And if you add it up over 12 months, the new rates will add up to $719.40 per year, or almost 5 times what it cost in Calgary, or almost double what it cost in Edmonton. Both cities offer on-demand transit, which makes it way easier for seniors to get around. TransLink canceled the on-demand program. Some municipalities offer via their community centers on-demand minibus transit service, but cities should not pay double for transit service that TransLink collect taxes every year. Many other cities approve lowering and eliminating fares and or free fares for over 65 and under 18 and low income 19 to 64. Transit is not equitable in Metro Vancouver. TransLink does not want to celebrate the Transit Equity Day on February the 4th. It is not just the fares that are not fair, but many services are not equitable. Many municipalities had better transit service under the private company BC Electric. For handicapped users, the BC government $45 bus pass and the CNIB passes are not acceptable. The BC government gave TransLink on March 15, $479 million with no or very little string attached. The agreement, the Memorandum of Understanding from 2020 can and should be changed. Your 2.3% increase is based on that Memorandum of Understanding. However, BC Transit is not increasing any of its fares in any of the transit systems in BC. In most other provinces, they provide specific grant to provide low-income fares for everyone based on income. And I would urge you to see their opinion page in today's Vancouver Sun that read, BC is not spending what is required to confront crisis. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute for a moment there. Nathan, thank you very much for your feedback, and someone from TransLink will be contacting you in regards to your feedback.
what
Thank
is
you.
required to confront pricing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Jennifer, we have a couple other speakers that were on our list, but I don't think they're in the waiting room, are they?
No, they haven't joined.
Okay. So I think we'll close off that section of our meeting. And again, thank you to our delegates that have made presentations to the board. And we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our CEO report. So Kevin.
Okay, thank you,
The
Chair.
floor is yours. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. Before starting my report, I would like to take a moment to also welcome our newest board members, Tracy Reddies and Alan Seckel, to their first open board meeting since joining us at the beginning of this year. I look forward to working with you both as we continue to push our region's transportation goals forward. Next slide, please. Today, I'm so excited to share that we've released our 2022 accountability report. And this is actually the 6th year we've released this report to ensure that we're transparent with our customers, our stakeholders, and other groups on how we've performed in the previous year while advancing on our key priorities. Last year, we showed strong ridership recovery, reaching 80%, leading our peer agencies in Canada and the US. 380,000 people took transit daily at the peak of 2022. To help our customers get where they needed to go, we delivered pre-COVID levels of transit service with a 46% increase in boardings in 2022 compared to 2021. This report also highlights some really important steps we took to improve the customer experience, from opening the new Waterfront Customer Service Center to launching the bike bus pilot and more. 2022 was also a critical year for planning the future of our region, and we released 6 major plans focused on regional transportation, climate action, the customer experience, and future investments. Additionally, we made progress on corporate priorities such as sustainability, reconciliation, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. This accountability report highlights the real value that TransLink is bringing to Metro Vancouver, delivering excellent service for our customers and keeping our region moving. Next slide, please. While the 2022 accountability report highlights the progress we made last year, its findings also underscore the need for continued investment in transit expansion. Strong ridership is leading to some overcrowding on the system. And with 50,000 newcomers moving into the region every year, further investment in transit is vital to ensure that we can not only maintain, but expand critically needed services now and into the future. Next slide, please. We recently released our bus speed and reliability report, which shows that bus delays caused by traffic congestion have returned to pre-pandemic levels. While the report found that bus delays come at a significant financial cost, it also suggests that these are solvable problems, with investment in expansion really being the key to improving bus performance in the region. Buses operate faster when protected from traffic with bus priority measures, such as those funded by TransLink's bus speed and reliability program. And these investments complement the service expansions and future rapid transit corridors identified in TransLink's 10-year priorities. The fact is that every day customers rely on buses to get them to the places that matter most. And with congestion returning on our roads, it's more important than ever that we prioritize bus service, continue to invest in transit, and meet the needs of our growing region. Next slide, please. And in that vein, that's why we were so pleased when the provincial government announced $479 million in funding for TransLink back on March 15th. And this funding ensures TransLink's ability to maintain current service levels and continue steady operations as planned through 2025. And we're so appreciative of this vote of confidence in our system and are grateful to the province for recognizing the importance of this funding. While this announcement provides certainty in the short term, it's essential that TransLink continues to find permanent, long-term solutions to address our financial challenges. Because with ridership growth and Metro Vancouver's population growing rapidly every year, it's vital that TransLink continues to have sustainable and dependable funding to both maintain current levels of service and prepare for that critically needed expansion. We're committed to working with our government partners to ensure a prosperous and sustainable future for the system and the region. And I do want to thank the board for your support in securing this funding. Next slide, please. Less than a year ago, we announced our real estate development program, a program that enables us to pursue development activities on properties owned by TransLink. The revenue generated from these developments will be used as new non-taxation dollars to fund the cost of operating and expanding our transit system. And today, we're extremely excited to announce our first project partnership with PCI Developments. Together, we're proposing to build a 30-story mixed-use residential, rental, and commercial development across from the future Arbutus SkyTrain station at the corner of West Broadway and Arbutus. This proposed building will include street-level retail and over 200 residential rental units, 20% of which will be rented below market to increase affordability in the area. And it will also serve as the future home of the Ohel Yaakov Community Kollel, a Jewish cultural, education, and neighborhood center. This will be our model transit-oriented development, just steps from rapid transit, an incoming bus loop, and the Arbutus Greenway. This development will also support the City of Vancouver's Broadway plan, while also helping to achieve targets outlined in Transport 2050 and Metro 2050. Details of this project are still being finalized, will be shared later this spring through a community open house. And following this initial phase of engagement, a formal proposal will be submitted to the city. We'll make sure to keep you updated as the project progresses. Next slide, please. We are also continuing to find new and innovative ways to enhance the customer experience, knowing that when we create a great experience for our customers, they're more likely to not only return to use our services, but also tell their friends about it too. In January, we introduced contactless Interact Debit as a new payment option across TransLink system, becoming the first transit agency in Canada to fully integrate this technology system-wide. The introduction of Interact Debit Tap to Pay makes boarding transit even easier, more convenient, and more accessible to use. We also recently became the first transit agency in Canada to partner with Amazon to introduce Amazon lockers at popular transit hubs across Metro Vancouver. And customers now have the option to conveniently and seamlessly pick up their Amazon packages on transit. Next slide, please. We took another big step in improving accessibility with the launch of the Accessible Navigation Pilot. And this exciting pilot will make it easier for customers with sight loss to navigate the transit system. And using specialized coded decals that can be scanned with a mobile phone, customers with sight loss can receive audio and haptic cues to help them navigate the system and access real-time information. The decals have been installed at 3 TransLink locations in New Westminster and in Vancouver. The Accessible Navigation Pilot will run for 6 months to gather community input and to explore this technology's feasibility with our infrastructure. And this new wayfinding technology really reinforces our commitment to accessibility and dedication to creating a more inclusive transit experience. Additionally, I'm excited to say that we recently introduced a new service that will allow customers to speak to customer information agents over the phone in more than 300 languages. Customers calling TransLink's customer information phone line can verbally request assistance in their chosen language, at which point a 3-way call will be started with a professionally certified translator. This new service is yet another example of how we're improving the customer experience, making the system easier to use, more personalized, and more accessible than ever, which in turn will attract more customers. And I'm thrilled to see the exciting customer experience enhancements we've made so far in 2023. Customer experience remains one of our top priorities, and work is ongoing to continue to improve that experience through new innovations and customer features. Next slide, please. TransLink also remains committed to evaluating its role and taking action in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples and future generations. Our network and public spaces play an important role in cultural recognition, representing Indigenous voices through art, through stories, and language. We recently unveiled new Indigenous art and accompanying Indigenous language signage at the Lonsdale Quay and Waterfront Seabus terminals. Created by local Indigenous artists, this artwork is a tribute to the Chinook salmon, which has played an iconic role in life on the West Coast for generations and is a critical part of the ecosystem in the Burrard Inlet and the Pacific Ocean. The new signage supports Indigenous language revitalization and preservation by creating awareness of the deep connections to the land and waters by the ancestors and current Indigenous community members of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. This important work must be done to support lasting and meaningful reconciliation by including Indigenous perspectives, cultures, and languages throughout the transit network. Next slide, please. Not only have we made some great strides in customer experience and reconciliation, but we're also continuing our journey to net zero GHGs by 2050. In February, we took another step towards electrifying our bus fleet by introducing the new Nova LFSE Plus electric bus. This is the first of 15 new buses that will bring TransLink's battery electric bus fleet from 4 to 19 over the next year. Each bus will save TransLink around $40,000 in fuel costs annually, and greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced by over 1,000 tons annually once all 15 buses are in service. And in the coming months, we'll be ordering more battery electric buses and the necessary charging infrastructure to support electrifying even more routes. Our federal and provincial government partners have committed to supporting the future electrification of TransLink's fleet through significant investments in the 2022 investment plan. The continued expansion of our bus fleet is a critical step towards achieving climate targets outlined in the Climate Action Plan and in the 10-year priorities. Next slide, please. Speaking of our commitment to climate action, on Saturday, April 22nd, TransLink will be celebrating Earth Day through our second annual region-wide campaign called Transit for the Planet, encouraging all Metro Vancouverites to take transit to reduce their environmental footprint. We're asking everyone to leave their cars behind on Earth Day, take the bus, West Coast Express, SkyTrain, SeaBus, knowing each person's individual choice can make a difference in the fight against climate change. Last year, nearly 320,000 people took Transit for the Planet, and had all these people driven gasoline cars instead, nearly 1,400 metric tons of CO2 would have been emitted. And that's equivalent to greenhouse gas emissions from about 300 gasoline cars being driven for a year. So details will be coming soon on how you can get involved in this important effort this year. Next slide, please. Along with our national peers and the Canadian Urban Transportation Association, we celebrated Transit Operator and Worker Appreciation Day on Saturday, March 18th. Each day, more than 8,000 employees who make up TransLink, BCRTC, CMBC, and Transit Police show up to provide an essential service for the people of Metro Vancouver. Our employees are our most valuable asset, and they play an important role in laying the foundation for the future of transportation that we envision for our region. We know they go the extra mile for TransLink's customer base to ensure that each experience on the transit system is the best it can be. Whether helping customers get to work, appointments, or visiting family and friends, our employees truly do keep this region moving. So a big thank you to all TransLink Enterprise employees for their hard work and dedication, not just on Transit Operator and Worker Appreciation Day, but every single day. Next slide, please. With that, I want to thank you so much for your time today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Thanks.
Well, Kevin, thank you very much for your report. That was a great overview of all the volume of things that we've been working on. I just want to point out, though, you're talking about electric buses. We're going to 19, but we still have our trolley buses, which still kind of are electric buses, are they not?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's a good point. The fact is that we have one of the largest electric trolley bus fleets in North America, and so a large portion of our bus fleet is already fully electrified. The next step is really the full conversion of our hybrid diesel buses over to battery electric buses, and we're really excited for that. It's a great development for us.
So you have to change your count on buses that we have, electrified buses. Anyway, I know they're the workhorse, and I think we shouldn't forget them. Anyway, any questions for Kevin in regards to his report? I know we all had a chance to review it ahead of time, and we are talking about many of these things. So seeing no questions, we'll move on to our BC Rapid Transit report, and we have Sandy Zane with us. So Sandy, welcome.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to your report.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the board. Happy to provide an update on the latest goings on at BCRTC. Next slide, please. I will provide a brief overview of our 2023 business plan, which provides a template and blueprint for our year. Our activities under our two headlines, delivering excellent service every day and achieving future readiness for our growth plan, and a bit about our ongoing work to improve our people and culture at BCRTC. Next slide, please. We kicked off the year in early January with releasing our internal BCRTC business plan for 2023. This is a document that keeps us accountable in terms of what we want to achieve across our 1,200 strong base. We organized our plan under the titles of Achieving Future Readiness and Delivering Excellent Service. All divisions participated, 35 different departments outlined their initiatives, a total of 92 different things we're working on this year, and all tied together by how we want to transform BCRTC. We're keeping an eye on being a preferred employer. It's the only way we will be able to grow and achieve the objectives of our expansion program. We want to always be keeping an eye on our KPIs for delivering excellent service and making sure we're improving our KPIs and meeting them. And breaking down silos, absolutely essential that we're working together across divisions, across departments, and with TransLink and the province on delivering on our expansion program. So this document is how we hold ourselves accountable to each other and how we track our progress throughout the year. Next slide, please. Under the banner of delivering excellent service, we were certainly tested in November and again in December with one of the most severe winter storms the region has experienced. It was an opportunity for us to test our ability to coordinate across all groups in the organization, be very nimble in responding to variable changing weather conditions from snow and ice and Arctic temperatures and atmospheric rivers all within 1 week. Our staff and our system demonstrated incredible resiliency to come through that storm around Christmas time. And we're now taking the time to get even better. So we've convened workshops and working groups to brainstorm as to how can we always be even readier for severe winter storms, because we expect more severe events as climate change takes hold in the region. So we're well on our way to asking ourselves, what can we be doing in terms of resourcing, readiness, plans, processes to be even more resilient in the face of large future storms. Next slide, please. Also in delivering excellent service, we achieved remarkable metrics in 2022, better than 98, almost 99% service delivery, better than 95% on-time performance. And this is despite the winter storms that we saw at the tail end of the year. So this is a testimony to what BCRTC can do when we pull together. And we are proud of these metrics and always working to also improve them. Next slide, please. In terms of the maintenance focus, we want to move from reactive to preventive maintenance, and our maintenance teams have been doing remarkable work in moving us towards being much more ahead of the curve and doing preventive maintenance. In that sphere, we have taken delivery now of our new grinder, which will help us keep the running rail smoother, which should help us get ahead of our noise issues. So the new grinder is now undergoing testing and commissioning. When it's ready for service, we'll be able to deploy and do more rail grinding to hopefully reduce the noise issues that we experience on the system. We have a West Coast Express locomotive, which is very near to being done in terms of refurbishment and coming back into service. So we're looking forward to that. Terrific progress on our elevating devices, both escalators and elevators. Really proud that in the last quarter, we filled out our complement of service technicians in elevating devices. And for the first time, we were able to attract technicians who joined our teams. The teams are doing tremendous work in keeping our escalators in good working order. We've exceeded our targets for the past 17 months on the escalators. We're also very aware that switches are one of the most critical areas on our system. We have now a program to make sure we're proactively maintaining or replacing switch machines to keep the system running well. And that's become an area of focus for us as well. Next slide, please. We're also keeping an eye on our environmental footprint and doing our part to reduce emissions. In 2022, we replaced over 1,000 light bulbs with more energy efficient LEDs. We've reduced our CO2 footprint by 28 tons. And that required, again, a cross-departmental collaboration to get the work done efficiently. And we received the grants which helped us do that. And we're always keeping a lookout on where else can we be reducing our carbon emissions and reducing our footprint. Next slide, please. Safety remains our top priority, both for our customers and for our people. Our passenger injury rate was the best in 2 years in 2022. And we actually exceeded our targets, and we continue to ask ourselves, how can we reduce risks which cause passenger injuries on the system? Similarly, we're making good progress with our people. Maintenance injury rates are improving. Support shops, one of the groups within maintenance, went 400 days injury-free, joining a couple of other departments in achieving that milestone. And we're always, again, on the lookout as to how we can do better. So we're working with our employees, with our staff, asking them, where do they see the risks? What are the hazards we should be paying attention to? And how can we run effective campaigns to further reduce the risks of injuries? Next slide, please. The other big part of how we spend our time is making sure we're ready for the future. So we work very closely with TransLink and the province on the delivery of the major projects as they take shape. Our team is concerned with operational readiness, making sure we provide the requirements that the new expansion facilities will require, both on Broadway subway project, that's BSP, or Surrey Langley SkyTrain, or expansion of our facilities. And we continue to work closely with the supplier on taking ownership of the new Mark V trains. We remain on schedule to take delivery of the first Mark V train by the end of this year. So that will be an exciting milestone for us. Next slide, please. On some specifics, we have significant progress on building our new operations control center. That's the graphic to the bottom left. That's the new OCC, as we call it. Remarkable progress with the contractor really picking up the pace on building that building, and that will be the new home of our control center once that building is completed. The top picture is progress on our station upgrade at Brentwood, one of our key hubs in Burnaby, and we are well on the way in improving accessibility and improving the entrance at Brentwood to improve the customer experience at that station. The bottom right image is work ongoing at expanding our maintenance facility here where I am at the Operations and Maintenance Center in Burnaby. We have a new building which will allow us to expand our maintenance capacity, and also our guideway maintenance team will move into new space, much better ergonomic space and more modern maintenance amenities in this new building. So very exciting new facilities taking shape, coming online, and all of them happening in the next couple of years. Next slide, please. None of this will be possible without our people. And we spend a lot of time on our health and our mental health. We took part on January 25 on Let's Talk Day. We encouraged everyone to talk, have open conversations, reach out to colleagues, and talk about what keeps us healthy mentally, and how we take time off to unplug and make sure we're looking after ourselves and looking after each other. So that was a campaign where we all shared how we make sure that we're looking after ourselves and how we can help each other in doing so. And what you see in the images are some of the tidbits that we all shared with each other as to how we look after ourselves. We also promoted resources as to if anyone is in need of assistance, how to reach out and get the help and support that they need. And next slide, please. And finally, this image and this incident is what makes us proud every single day. This was during the snow event on March 1, when we had that late snow earlier this year. One of our STAs, Michelle, went out of her way near Lafarge Lake to help an elderly customer cross the road when she had no reason to leave her station and do that. It was slippery, it was wet, it was snow. This STA noticed that this customer was taking needed time to cross the crosswalk, and she made sure that she was safe by reaching out and helping her cross the street. This is who we are. This is what we do, and it makes us very proud to see this kind of initiative, and this is the culture that we're building at BCRTC. That's my report, Chair, and happy to take any questions from the board.
Thanks, Annie. That last picture warmed my heart. I just want to note the great sound effects that you have going in the background. I mean, we can hear the trains kind of moving, and I'm just, it sets the stage for a really great report. So any questions? Oh, I see that Mayor Hurley has a question.
Hello, and thank you so much for the report. I just had a question around elevators and, the needs of our mobility challenged passengers. We had a presentation at a meeting from the public that stated about a single elevator being closed for 3 weeks. And that really challenged the lives of mobility challenged people. I just wonder what the priority is for you and how quickly we get that type of work done so that our mobility challenged passengers are really treated equitably.
Thank you, Mayor. That incident was definitely brought to my attention, and we took a deep dive into those circumstances. A 3-week outage on an elevator is not the standard we want to set, and we want to do better for our customers. We were caught out by a supply chain issue. We used to have replacement cables for our elevators available locally. We expected that to be the case, but in this case, the cable had to be ordered from a different country. There were other mishaps on our end with procurement, and when we finally realized we needed to order the cable, it took too long to order it. So as usual in these instances, it was a combination of a couple of things which went wrong. Lessons learned on my team. We're now expecting that there will be a delay, so we are pre-ordering and stocking the supplies that we need, learning that supply chains are changing. Regardless, we are one of our metrics is availability of elevating devices. We want to do better, and that was not a situation that we want to see repeated. Whenever we can, we are doing preventive maintenance to be ahead of with the status of our devices, and that's where we want to be. If it's down because we are proactively maintaining it. We don't want machinery to fail and then have to catch up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Hurley. Andy Ross.
Thank you. Thanks for the report, Sunny. Maybe if you could you just touch a little bit? I'm kind of interested with the new Mark V trains. We're fairly familiar, but I'm not sure if people realize the difference. Could you just touch on a Mark V being a longer train, what kind of extra capacity we have, and also how many stations were actually having to be physically modified to accommodate these new trains?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. The Mark Vs are longer trains. They would have about a 20% improvement in capacity over the Mark IIIs that we have today in service. The length is just marginally longer than the longest consists we run today, where we have the 6-car Mark Is with the space between the cars. So the Mark Vs will be a little bit longer. It's marginal. Most of our platforms are okay. We need to just extend the edges of the platforms by a tiny bit, and that work is underway as we speak. It's really in the details of the platforms, not substantive infrastructure changes. We recognize that when we spec the Mark V trains, and we're making sure the stations, not just the platform lengths, but the surrounding infrastructure, the maintenance capacity, the maintenance platforms, the ability of technicians to get to the trains at the stations and in our yard. Those were all things we thought ahead of, and we are actually doing that work as we speak. We're prioritizing the busier stations to make sure that the busier stations are well in hand before the trains are in service. And we have a program to look after those details across the system.
That's great. So, yeah, I think it's worth noting that just by the change of the technology, increasing the capacity should, again, increase the customer experience, which is what we're always looking for. Thanks, Annie.
Thanks, Andy. Mayor Hurley, I see your hand is up. Is that another question or is that from before?
I just didn't take it down.
Oh, okay. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. So Sandy, I have a question. I don't see any others from the board. I have a question in regards to, well, question and a comment in regards to your Appendix A in your report around the growth of the fleet. So I see today we have 342 vehicles. By 2026, we're going to have 377, and by 2050, we're going to have 655 vehicles. So I'd like a little commentary, if you could, on what this means to BCRTC. Like, how is this growth? This is going to be substantial in our region, and I'm just some commentary on that would be helpful and insightful for me.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, this is the most ambitious expansion of rail service in the region since SkyTrain was introduced. This is a terrific metric to point that we are effectively doubling the size of the system in terms of the trains, and with Broadway Subway, with Surrey Langley SkyTrain potentially extending to UBC, the number of stations, the amount of track. We are actually tripling the number of OMCs, or operations and maintenance centers. We'll be opening a new one in Coquitlam and potentially a new one south of the Fraser. So by many metrics, we are close to a doubling of the size of BCRTC. And that's our challenge, which is why achieving future readiness is a headline for us at BCRTC, is how we are reinventing the organization for a very different future, a future which has a lot more service for our customers, new trains, new facilities, new amenities, and a different way of doing business. For the first time, SkyTrain will be operating out of multiple operations and maintenance centers. For our entire history, we've operated out of one center. We'll be a multi-nodal center. And that means different ways of doing maintenance, different ways of storing the trains, and different ways of operations. So this is a very ambitious program. It reinvents how SkyTrain operates. And that's why we're mobilizing the organization in that direction and setting that achieving future readiness as our primary objective, along with the day-to-day delivering excellent service.
Great, thank you. Exciting times ahead. Well, Sandy, I don't see any further questions, so I thank you for your report. Thank you for doing all that work and preparing for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, not to be outdone, welcome Mike McDaniel to the board meeting, and we look forward to the Coast Mountain Bus Company report. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chair Cunningham, members of the board. Happy to be here today. And I'll tell you a little bit of what's going on at Coast Mountain Bus Company. So we'll go to the next slide. So there is our agenda for today. I'm going to give a brief update on Handy Dart, talk a little bit about safety, specifically on the lock zone and what we're doing right now and in the next couple of months. An update on operations with the IBBG visit, which I'll explain in a second. And a corridor deployment update from continuing from last fall. EDI as well, a neat story there, which I'll share with you, and then ending with our people and some recruitment, as well as I'm going to be repetitive here and talk about Transit Operator and Worker Appreciation Day. So we'll go to the next slide. So first, we do have, I'm not sure if you saw the picture on the last slide. It was a nice spring day. I am reminding the board that just a few weeks back, we had snowy weather. So you see that in the picture on your slide. Handy Dart, as always, operates on essential service levels. This is kind of doubling of staff and working through the roadways that they need to go through in all of their service delivery. On the service update, we delivered 99.5% of the requested trips. This, of course, does not include trips that a customer chose to cancel for various reasons. Our taxi trips are down just a little bit. Previous Q3 2022 was 23%. We're at 22% right now. And in regards to on-time performance, also down just a little bit. We were 90% in Q3 of 2022, and we're just dropped by 1%. It's not uncommon for Q4. Inclement weather, as I've stated, does have an impact on all service, of course, including our Handy Dart service as well. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I just wanted to provide an update to the board. We in Q1, we finished our training for about 70 of our transit security officers, security operations coordinators, in regards to naloxone and recognizing signs of opioid overdoses, and how to administer naloxone safely to anybody in that situation. Within days here, within a couple of days, we will have those kits in hand, and our transit security will be ready to help out when needed. Not on the slide here, our next step is Q2, which is our transit supervisors also out in the system, helping out. They're going through the training in about a month, and then they will be set up with the naloxone kits as well to help out. So just another thing that we're doing, just given the challenges of today, to make sure that we can help out when we're needed. Next slide, please. So I mentioned this. This is the International Bus Benchmarking Group, IBBG. This is something members from across the globe. We've been members for quite some time now, and they had their semi-annual meeting here in Vancouver near the tail end of November, first part of December. And whether it's London, Barcelona, Kuala Lumpur, Montreal, New York, a number of others as well, they came into town. We were all able to share our stories, our best practices, what we're doing over the next couple of years in areas of low carbon fleet, bus rapid transit, new mobility services. We talked about KPIs. We do that every month, actually, with IBBG, but we're able to do it in person here in Vancouver and share some stories. I was able to join for one of the meetings on one of the days. It was great to, again, just hear different perspectives of the challenges that other transit agencies are going through around the world. And we all learned from each other, which was great. Next slide, please. So this next one, this is an update again from last year, where I talked to the board about the corridor deployment. What we've done now, really the update here, is that we've incorporated that pilot, I guess, if you will, from last year into our normal day-to-day operations. And so we're able to now take one corridor with, of course, multiple routes running through that corridor per depot per month, and just put that into our daily routine. And so this was to have our transit supervisors, you see on the screen there's one of our transit supervisors, and what they'll be doing with transit operators real time in these corridors is checking on signage, checking on the quality of shelters, bus loads, short turns, on-time performance, really just to facilitate what's going on with customers and transit operators on the road. We saw some great gains and some great learnings from it this last year. Now we've embedded it in what we do every day. So that's a great success, and we've now carried it on. Next slide, please. So this was the neat story I was referring to. This is Mila Gonzalez that we have in our C-Bus team. And I'm just going to share a little bit about her story. And this is part and parcel to kind of help celebrate International Women's Day and Women's Month in March. I think we're getting some feedback from Mayor Hurley's sound there. I'll keep going.
Yeah, if we could all mute our mics if you're not speaking, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just to share a little bit of Mila's story, when she was growing up in Venezuela, she dreamed of being in the Navy there. Some challenges, of course, with that, and fast forward to her life in Canada, where she was a captain of a small False Creek ferry, before joining C-Bus. Has worked for C-Bus for several years, and as a C-bus attendant and was completing her Transport Canada certification. Timing, a lot of times, is everything. And when she was just completing her studies, a controller mate position became available. She applied and she got that position. This is kind of second in command relative to the captain, and she is one of our great officers that helps drive the C-bus every single day. And again, thanks to Mila for letting us share her story with you today. It is a great one, and it helps us celebrate all of our great employees at C-bus as well as throughout CNBC. And next slide, please. And so to trades recruitment, we've talked about this a lot, but we've done a big push over the last few months that I wanted to update the board today. In January, with the assistance of TransLink HR marketing, we ran a 3-week campaign focusing on recruitment of maintenance roles, specifically on tradespersons, and then also specifically on women in trades as well, through a variety of different means, whether it was radio ads or social media. We have a brand new landing page on the TransLink recruitment area career website that we have specifically for maintenance. The campaign generated about 600 job applications, about 500 of which were for unionized trade positions and about 100 for management positions. We currently have 74 open positions right now in trades at CNBC, which is significant, and we need to fill those. And it's campaigns like this that are obviously going to help do that. And so, kudos and thanks to the teams that worked on that, including from TransLink Human Resources and Marketing. Next slide, please. And so finally, again, to be repetitive, Transit Operator Worker Appreciation Day. It is actually on March 18th. We celebrated on March 17th, not because it was St. Patrick's Day, but because it was a Friday, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to speak to as many staff as possible on that day. More of our staff working on Friday than Saturday. So we did that. It was a very long day for many of us. Started around the 4 a.m. and ended around kind of the 6 p.m. But we were able to get out to depots and garages and loops and exchanges, talking to staff, and just putting really the last year and a couple of years into perspective about how our team has really just stepped up, gone above and beyond, and helped this region stay moving around to all the people and places that they need to visit and go to. So kudos to our team at CNBC for everything, and it was a great day on March 17th, and it was great to celebrate with the team. And last slide, please. And so that concludes my report, Chair, members of the board. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Mike. It was a good report, and I see that Andy Ross has a question for you.
Yeah, thanks for the report, Mike. I've got 2 areas I'd like to comment on, and I don't think it'll come as a surprise to you. I'd like to commend you on the work on the trades, but I think it's useful maybe to hear from you the transformational process we're going through now, specifically around electrification, and how that whole industry is going to change over a relatively short period of time. And really, it's a new area for us, for everyone to be exploring as we move away from sort of heavy diesel into electrification. But maybe I know you gave us some information at a previous meeting on what kind of opportunities exist, and I think it's fantastic if we could look at women and people who traditionally haven't worked in the trades as maybe a unique opportunity. So, for my first point, maybe if you could reference that, it would be useful.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Great question. And this is what occupies most of our time. We heard about the big transformational projects that Sandy has on the go at BCRTC. Ours at CNBC is electrification. And what's, I think, one of the challenges, besides what you stated, which was new training, new type of staff, new jobs, is we're going to be living actually in 2 worlds for a long time, because the transition is not going to happen overnight. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to figure out how do we transition our teams when we need to transition them. This is training, retraining. When we're hiring, we're looking for, again, different skill sets. We also have to dig into all of those areas that kind of feed what we're doing. This would include places like BCIT and others, because we need to make sure that that the workforce over the years is being able to be trained to do these kind of higher tech jobs or more electric tech jobs that we have. Now we have those today, but proportionately, there are fewer of our staff relative to, say, automotive mechanics. So we're working on training programs right now. That's actually part of our work on the low carbon fleet transition. And we're also working with agencies across Canada because everybody is trying to plan this and figure this out right now. And so we're working with CUTA, which is the national association, as well as APTA, which is a kind of North American association. All of it, to be honest, is really in its infancy. We're all trying to figure it out right now. How are we going to do that transition? So what I hope to be able to do over the coming year and years is just continue to update the board on where are we at on that. We're really at the starting end of it right now, though.
Great, thanks, Mike. My second point is actually an ask of a personal favor, and it relates to the first part of your written report on the winter weather response. I think myself and other board members would really appreciate a cheat sheet for the number of times we get asked every time it snows on why we don't have snow tires on all of the buses. So maybe for next one, if you could give a cheat sheet saying we would need X amount of thousands of snow tires, X amount of hours, it would cost X amount of dollars, and we'd have to, lose so much service to put a potential snow tire on for maybe a day that it does snow. It would make our lives so much easier. So if you could have that arranged for our next snowfall, it'd be really useful. Well,
Andy, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this now, because I think as you're asking it, one of the really important clarifications that we've been sending out to the public in education, and so I'll put that on the table right now. The tread that we use, the rated tread that we use, is a three-peak mountain snowflake tread. That is actually the highest rated tread you can buy for a conventional bus, full stop. There is no greater rating that you can get. And we actually run that year round. There's a couple other transit agencies in Canada and North America that do the same. Many actually use even a lesser grade in all season. And ours is actually the greatest tread you can get, the highest rated tread you can get. There isn't, for all of you that have individual cars that you drive at times, you can go out and buy a snow tire. The difference is that snow tires don't exist as the same definition you would get for your vehicle. The snow tire for transit, conventional transit vehicles, is the three-peak mountain snowflake. So the good news is that we have the highest rated tire that you can get. We also have supplemented that, as we've talked about before, to the board around the snow socks that we do on some of our higher elevations, our Burnaby Mountain routes, as well as on some on the North Shore. And so we'll continue to do that and continue to look for innovations. But the good news is we actually have the highest rated tires you can get for conventional buses out there right now.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, Mike, I noticed that in your report, and I didn't know that actually, so I was really happy that you included it in the report, because that was kind of new information to me as well. So the next person that has a question is Director Reimer. So Andrew.
Thank you, Chairperson. Hi, Mike. I had two questions. One from the KPIs. I noticed that the operating cost per service hour is up 7% year over year. Can you talk a bit about what the drivers are for that?
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. The primary driver for that is actually fuel cost. So when you look through our kind of consolidated financials, which we do a very brief update in the report you're referencing, what it'll tell you is that we had some ups and downs throughout our financials for the year. Some of the favorables was that we saved on areas of salaries and wages because of our vacancies. That's not what we want. We actually want to fill those positions. But I reference the board back to all of the times we've been talking about recruitment and trying to get our positions filled. But we did save relative to our budget. What was unfavorable, the largest unfavorable, was actually fuel cost. And that's something that we work with TransLink Finance to forecast and to budget for. What we had spec'd for 2022's budget we missed. It was higher. We predicted it to fall. It did not fall where we wanted it to. And so that's going to drive the expenses into our formula that we talk about, cost per service kilometer. So that is the driving force. I would say that is almost entirely the driving force, with a distant second, but important to note, which is inflationary costs related to supplies. Those were higher in 2022 than we predicted. We have adjusted for that in 2023, albeit we're in only kind of 2.5 months so far. We'll see if that adjustment in 2023 was enough, given the supply chain and inflationary costs that we're seeing out there right now.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I mean, between pandemic and the wars and extreme weather, I'm guessing these things are extremely hard to predict in any context, but especially this one. Second question was around the naloxone training. Well, first, just to say how pleased I am to see that you've rolled this out. The question was around reporting out. Will we expect to hear anything about that moving forward?
Yes, and a great question. That's exactly what our plan is. So again, as of days from now, we will have our transit security with the kits. Probably in about 2 months from now, we will have our transit supervisors. These are the ones that are a little bit more stationary at loops and exchanges that are helping out our transit operators and customers. They will be trained and have kits. So on the system, we'll have somewhere in the neighborhood of around 60 real time at any time. Our plan is to just continue that training for others. But what we'll be able to do is track the responses that we have, and we'll be able to share those out with the board at future meetings. So yes, for sure.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And Jen, you're next.
Yes, thank you. Michael, your written report speaks to our aim to increase the percentage of accessible bus stops by 2% each year. And looking at the year-over-year progress, it seems we didn't quite achieve that aim in the last year. And I wondered if you could speak to any changes in approach we might be taking to try to get back on track with that 2% per year goal for accessible bus stops.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. It's a bit of a moving target. So we end up having bus stops that we reduce because of things like bus stop balancing, and we have other bus stops that we add. So what you'll see across reports is we'll reference how many bus stops we have, and if you actually compare the two, that number actually fluctuates. That's part of the dynamic that's going on in regards to how many we're converting to accessible bus stops. One of the other challenges now is we've been doing this for a number of years, and we're getting to the point where a few of the go forward ones that we're converting are just logistically more challenging than ones of the past. So sometimes we're running into those issues. We're running into those issues either from a cost standpoint, from a logistics standpoint, from a timing. There's integrated bus stops with something else that is within the municipality, and we need to work with the municipality to do that. So we're coming up against more challenging conversions. What we're doing is we're trying to actually get in front of that to learn from that, so we can actually keep our pace up, as you mentioned. That's something maybe I can share a little bit more in my written report next time of what some of our strategies are. But that gives you a bit of an idea of what's going on as we go forward now to kind of close the gap to 100%.
Great. Thank you, Mike. I have a question, and it's about the Hastings Corridor Transit Security Initiative that you're embarking on. Mm-hmm. First of all, I want to say how happy I am to see this initiative starting. I think that I have great hopes for it, and that from a safety perspective and for our customers. I'm just wondering, again, kind of around the reporting, how we're going to know how successful or what this is, what this impact is having for our customers and for our drivers, actually, for all of our employees as well.
Yeah, and thanks, Chair. And I'm glad you looped in employees with that too, because that's really what we are focused on, is customers and employees through that corridor. And so a combination of what we're doing with security, what we're doing with our corridor deployment model that I mentioned, as well as working with transit police, VPD, City of Vancouver, we're all working together to try to figure out how to decrease the incidents that are happening through that corridor and increase safety overall for customers and employees. I think what I'll do is I'll take that question and we'll be able to report back out at a future time to try to figure out what measurements, what KPIs make sense to be able to report back out. What I can tell you is we're all focused very much on this. And when there are incidents of any kind, obviously throughout the entire system, but in this area of the Hastings corridor, we dive into each one and we try to figure out what root causes are, what we can do about it, how we can change our operation. Maybe I'll just take that question and be able to figure out what KPIs we can report out to the board so you can understand what's happening more from a KPI perspective on that. Thank you.
That would be greatly appreciated, Mike. Thank you. I have one other question. Oh, I see Harpinder has a question. Go ahead, Harpinder.
Thank you, Lorraine. So my question is kind of related to the other point you made about BCIT and training. And how is that progressing? I know that could be a potential risk for us as our organization as we move forward. We want to make sure we have the well-equipped, well-educated workforce to help us transition into the future. It just kind of for our kind of a risk radar for the board. Just wanted to see if you can provide a little more detail on how that's progressing and what we need to do as an organization to make sure it's successful.
Yeah, thanks, Rupinder. The planning is progressing well. I think doing specific changes, we haven't got to that point yet. But maybe what I'll add to it is that I use BCIT as one example. It's a great example. But really what we're looking at is framing, and this is what we're working on internally within the TransLink enterprise for all areas, not just for CMBC, but is framing how we're going to plug into and influence workers, not when they're in a technical college or university, but prior to that. And so we're really framing this as middle school, secondary, high school, to figure out how we can actually plug into that curriculum and start speaking to that group before they're making a decision whether they should go to a college, a university, a trade school. We're not doing that right now en masse. We're doing that situationally, and we need to actually round that out to be something we just do as a program. So I guess what I'm telling you is that we're working on the planning to frame out a more holistic, more robust plugin. And again, at a future date, I can explain that a little bit more, and possibly a report to the board from Human Resources at TransLink could also help do that as well.
Okay, that's very helpful. That's actually really encouraging, especially for the long term. I'm sure there's a lot of young kids out there that are, thinking about their career choices, and it's a long time career choice with TransLink and this new technology. That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harpinder. And Mike, I don't see any further questions, so I think we will say thank you to you and appreciate all your information for us today.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, item number 6 on our agenda is from a report from the Transit Police, and we have Deputy Chief Anita Furlan with us today. Anita, welcome, and we'll look forward to your report.
Good morning, board chair members. I'm pleased to provide an overview of some of our police operations and initiatives for you. Next slide, please. So I think the key one, and it's been a long time coming, is our community safety officer program. So what this is a new category of frontline transit police employee that will supplement our regular sworn patrol police officers. So they will provide additional uniform visibility on the transit system and address low-risk incidents that do not necessarily require the powers or tools of a regular sworn police officer. So in addition to these regular patrol duties, they will also assist with tasks such as community engagement, transit safety education, perimeter security at police incidents, crowd control, fare enforcement, and support at major events and emergencies, along with other responsibilities. So our recruitment of our CSOs began in January, and once hired, they will complete a rigorous training program starting in the summer here at our headquarters in Sapperton, and then they will be followed by field training with one of our regular sworn members. And they will be peace officers that are empowered to enforce transit bylaws and the transit conduct and safety regulations, but that is all they have the powers to do. Next slide, please. So obviously we discussed mental health as an issue that we see many people in the public dealing with. It's also that's a significant factor for all of our police persons. And so we are very happy to have welcomed a Pacific Assistance Dog, PADS accredited facility dog named Norquay. So in December, Norquay, who is a 3-year-old Labrador Retriever Cross, and his handler, who is one of our confidential assistants here, at Transit Police, completed the accredited facility dog training program and began working in the physical, social, and emotional support to all of our Transit Police personnel. So unlike the existing 7 Transit Police dogs that are trained to detect explosives and firearms, Norquay's job is to assist with the mental health of Transit Police employees. Obviously, situations faced by police officers, as we've seen tragically over the last week with the death of 3 officers, it can leave an increased level of stress, anxiety, and emotional trauma. So we always work on a critical incident stress management program, and debriefings and defusings are part of those programs. And Norquay being present at these allows, just as you see in the pictures, when you're with a dog, it really just does reduce that stress and allows people and our employees to better defuse and decompress after these situations, and hopefully maintain their mental health and be able to continue to support as police officers and dispatchers on a daily basis. Next slide, please. So our Fair Inspection app. So this has gone through quite a transition. So in 2013, that's when the compass gates were installed. And what we had then was called a handheld unit that was similar to what UPS or FedEx uses, the scanners. The devices worked, but they were quite cumbersome in their size. And then they would also become unreliable as the technology got older and the batteries were also an issue. So we are very happy to report that in late 2022, a new Fair Inspection app replaced the outdated handheld units. So really now our officers just open the app on their phone and scan the compass card. The information pops up on the screen and shows them exactly what type of compass media the subject is using, whether it's a monthly pass, day pass, or a single-use ticket, and how many zones they have. It shows trip history, and this helps determine if the passenger is in possession of a valid fare, making the process more streamlined. I do want to note, though, that this is the fare infraction notices for fare evasion is at the discretion of our officers. And we also have the ability to hand out free fare passes to those people that we encounter that we know are simply just not able to pay the fare. So, and that is at the discretion of our officers, and we certainly utilize that often. Next slide, please. So in terms of talking about our overall statistics for 2022, I'm very pleased to announce that all of our stats are trending downward. So as you can see, crimes against persons, and this is rated per 100,000 boarded passengers, so onto all of the forms of transportation that we police. So we saw a decrease of 21% to our 2021 numbers, and crimes against property also decreased by 33%. So obviously, this is something that we at Transit Police are very happy to see continuing on a downward trajectory. And our continued focus will be on the safety of our transit users and to increase the perception of safety on our system. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to provide you an overview of some of the specialized units that I don't think many people are aware of that we have here at Transit Police. So in 2020, the new Targeted Mobile Enforcement Team was established. And this is a small team that focuses on providing enhanced transit fare enforcement, arresting those found breaching conditions or wanted on warrants while on the system, and focusing on enforcement around bus lanes and exchanges in order to improve safety for transit operators, riders, and the general public. So you can see the stats in the slide are significant. with them also working with our jurisdictional police agencies. And this is an important partnership because it helps to build the relationships between the transit police officers and all the jurisdictional police agencies that we come in contact with since we police through 22 communities. This also allows us to educate those jurisdictional police members on the duties and responsibilities of transit police, and also how the intricacies of a transit system work that most regular police officers are not aware of. So it's a great partnership that they have with them, and working together on numerous joint enforcement projects. As you can also see from the slide, they are very active on social media, often reminding the public to obey laws and inform the public about the work we do to keep transit riders safe and the community safe. Next slide, please. So our General Investigations Unit investigates serious, complex, or serious offenses that exceed the patrol section's ability to investigate fully. Their main focus is on crimes against persons, so sexual offenses, robberies, assaults, criminal harassment, or hate crimes. They also lead investigations into significant crimes against property, including crimes impacting transit assets and property. So crimes against property can have a public safety element as well as impact transit operational efficiencies and revenues. In 2022, the GIU section forwarded 128 charges, an increase of 37% from 2021. And they had an 89% file solve rate, which is impressive to say the least. They've made 65 arrests and with an increase of 10% since 2021. So the top 25% of the files for 2022, to give you context, was related to assault, mischief under, which is basically, say, graffiti or spray painting, breaking into an area, sexual offenses, and possession of a weapon. Overall, the team worked in 7 jurisdictions, with Vancouver representing nearly 50% of the files. So some of the highlights, obviously, I'm sure you all heard on the news of the significant incidents of somebody shooting at the buses in the Hastings corridor. So we worked closely with our partners at Vancouver to bring someone to charge for 11 incidents of this. And again, a great example of the partnerships and the relationships we have with our jurisdictional police partners. A second investigation identified 2 individuals that had stabbed a male victim at one of our stations. And we were able to recover the machete used, and the individuals pled guilty in court to these incidents. And then the last one, the General Investigations Unit reviewed captured video and identified a suspect in 7 indecent acts. And we were able to locate that subject and arrest him. And actually, he was here in the country illegally. So he was actually deported from the country due to our efforts. Next slide, please. So another specialized unit here is the crime suppression team. So they are utilized to quickly and effectively respond to incidents in real time or focus on project-based investigations, most of which are conducted with our jurisdictional police partners. And this is based on crime trends or hotspots identified in or near the transit system. So they also maintain contact with other agencies, such as the End Gang Life Initiative run by the BC Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit, and they receive and share intelligence with our policing partners. So this collaborative work contributes to providing safe journeys for transit riders, going to, while on, and leaving from their transit journey. In 2022, this unit made 90 arrests, submitted 40 reports to Crown Counsel, so that is a request for charge approval, obtained 9 search warrants, and opened 325 new files. And to put context, this is a really small unit. Normally we would have 2 teams of 5. We now are down to about 1 team of 5, just due to absences. So an impressive amount of work and investigations being done. They also conducted a 4-month drug trafficking investigation involving drug dealers who were meeting drug buyers at various SkyTrain stations throughout the New Westminster area. So this investigation resulted in the execution of a search warrant and a significant amount of drugs, cash, and vehicles seized. And obviously, this is paramount that this type of activity is taken off of the transit system, because our transit users do not want to walk by or participate or see people participating in drug trafficking or drug transactions. So all of this work is done to enhance the safety on our system and to remove the criminal element from our system. Next slide, please. So our community engagement team can always be seen in and around our transit system. The community engagement team has 6 neighborhood police officers who are assigned each to a community service area, a mental health liaison officer, and an Indigenous liaison officer. Some of the initiatives, 467 community events, and really the focus is on interacting with our transit ridership, speaking to them about safety on the system, and things like our text to our operations communication center, which is an invaluable resource for them to be able to report on something if they don't want to call 911 or even be heard. They can surreptitiously send us a text, and we can deploy members through our operational communication center. And they help to inform the public that this service is actually available to them. We also have a homeless outreach initiative. So we provide support and referrals to homeless persons, try and assist if there are encampments to try and give them referrals and support. And you'll often see us giving them food, water, socks, and blankets to make them as comfortable as possible. And we also hand out free fare passes if it's needed. Lastly, our community policing volunteer program has provided over 7,000 hours to the transit police and has increased the presence again on the system. And these volunteers again assist with community engagement and education opportunities and attend numerous events throughout the year supporting the community engagement team. Next slide, please. So as I wrap up, I want to acknowledge that the safety of our transit users and the employees is of paramount importance to us at the Transit Police. We know that visibility in and around the system provides the public with reassurance that we are there to respond to any issue that they may encounter. So we are looking forward to having our community safety officers out on the system to enhance that visible presence and to augment our sworn members. And I thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have for me.
Thank you very much, Anita. Appreciate that report. I see Andrea has a question for you, so we'll let Andrea start.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the comprehensive report. I had a couple questions. One was I had a comment first, was just to thank you for the change in the way that you're reporting mental health apprehensions, so we can see the outcome of that. The 2 questions, one was around, you noted that the stats around crime, it's way down for 2022 over 2021. But I'm wondering if you can give us a sense of what's driving that. I mean, certainly the media the sense one gets from the media is that crime is way up. I'm aware that it is way down statistically, but I'd love to know some background on why that is.
I will be honest with you, Director Reimer, I cannot answer that question. I can tell you that the work that we do, I'm certainly hoping with the visibility and presence on the system is driving that decrease, at least in and around the transit system. And those are the statistics that I'm reporting on. But I can't give you any specifics because we don't have any KPIs that are telling us exactly the work that we do. I can surmise that it's the visibility of us on the system. Obviously, we don't have the ridership at the same level as we did pre-COVID. Not sure if that has anything to do with those statistics either. But that's the best answer that I can give you for now.
Complex problem. So the second question was around mental health apprehensions, which were the one notable trend that was up for the year. Do you have a sense of where that's heading? My memory was that perhaps it's heading a little down, the apprehensions over the last quarter, and maybe that will continue.
So this last quarter, yes, but I'm going to suggest it's an anomaly as much as I would love to see this going down. I think we need to see a more fulsome approach in the totality of the mental health supports that are out there. It was down, we had only 44 persons in Q4 of 2022, but the 3 quarters before that was an average of around 70 to 73. So I don't know if that was a blip in the system or if it is going down, but from what we are seeing and from the amount of reports that I read daily, mental health and mental health apprehensions still form a significant part of the duties of our police officers on transit. We work very closely with our mental health supports. And I can tell you, in all of 2022, we did not take one person that was apprehended under Section 28 of the Mental Health Act to cells. So they were either, voluntarily admitted, they were either committed, or they were released, or we drove them home. But none of those people ended up in our cells. And really, I think that's the focus that we have, is that we're trying to move them to where they can get the supports that are necessary. And I think we can all appreciate that putting somebody with mental health issues into a cell is not the support that they require. So I'm happy to report on those statistics next quarter to see if there is a difference and if the Q4 trends are continuing. But I'm just trying to pull up some stats here to see if I can give you anything better than that. I'm happy to be able to provide them through the TransLink secretary to get those to you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Andrea. Andy.
Thank you, and thanks, Anita, for the report. My next question is kind of generated from other police forces, but it occurred to me I'd never heard any reports back from our group on the use of body cams. We're seeing more on news now as we see confrontations and whether police forces in British Columbia should or should not be using. Has it ever been considered for transit police, and is there an opinions on the effectiveness of using those devices?
Yes, certainly it's been considered. I'm part of the BC Association of Chiefs of Police Executive, and there's a subcommittee within that association that is actually looking at the policies and procedures of body-worn cameras. I think what our focus is, and I think what the focus is of many police agencies, is to get the digital evidence management system up and running, and that will allow for the effective downloading and storage of the data. So not only are body-worn cameras expensive to purchase, but one of the greatest hindrances is what to do with all of the data. So you can just imagine all of the police officers on patrol all day and the amount of data and video data that is obtained throughout their deployment duties. And all of that has to be stored. And so that is one of the areas that certainly the BCACP subcommittee is looking at, so that there is a consistency in the storage. But we will wait to see what the subcommittee comes out with in regard to all of the police agencies here in BC. But I certainly see that as something that we will be moving to in the future.
And a supplemental to that, if I may, given that there are experiences in other jurisdictions, has there been any effectiveness studies, both on practical and cost, on pros and cons of the usage of devices? I'm assuming that the intent was to when you get into legal cases, that it provides evidence which may be beneficial and cost effective. Is there analysis that's been done that supports this?
I know that there are trials being done, but I don't have any specific reports. I mean, throughout North America, some of even the companies that are providing these have done efficacy studies, but I don't have a specific one for you, Andy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Anita. I just have a question in regards to CSOs. First of all, I want to say how happy I am that they're starting. I'm wondering if next time, or if you could provide through the Corporate Secretary's office, a picture of what the uniform, the differentiation, like we see the badge and I see that, but it's kind of a small little piece on the uniform. And I'm just kind of curious from a public perspective, how they're going to see the different officers when they are out on the system, and how people will know who's who in the system. Because we have transit, you have your police force, you've got now the CSOs, and we have transit security. And so I'm just kind of wondering how they all look different? In what way?
No, that's an excellent question, Board Chair. So we have gone through that, and I can certainly provide that to you. I will tell you that there will be nothing on that uniform that says the word police. It's quite large and it says community safety officer, but there will be no wording of police on there whatsoever. But I'm certainly happy to provide that to you. We have gone through. They will also have a lighter colored uniform shirt. And we can certainly send out those specs to yourself and the rest of the board members.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, Anita, I don't see any further questions, so thank you very much for your time here today. Appreciate all your answers and all the great information you provided.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, board members, we're going to move now to item number 7, which is a report from a fellow board member, chair of our Finance and Audit Committee, Tracy.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank
and thank you very much for your kind welcome today. It's a privilege to be part of this board and really appreciate the opportunity to work with everyone here. Yes, we had a recent Finance and Audit Committee meeting and the committee discussed a variety of topics. We reviewed and recommended the 2022 audit financial statements for approval at this meeting. I'd also like to acknowledge Christine and the rest of the management team for a very clean and unqualified audit. We also reviewed the 2022 annual statutory plan, which, as you know, discusses the performance of TransLink over the past year and specifically how that compares to the 2022 investment plan. This annual statutory plan is also being recommended by the committee for approval by the board and for release to the Mayor's Council on Regional Transportation. The committee also reviewed and recommended for approval at this meeting today amendments to the TransLink transit tariff. Can't say that fast 3 times, but that transit tariff increase is 2.3% and will take place effective July 1st. It's based on the approved 2022 investment plan and the agreement with the province that fare increases would be held to 2.3% from 2021 to 24 under the BC Safe Restart Plan. We're also recommending for approval by the board the annual increases allowable under TransLink's acts to property tax and replacement tax. The 2023 property tax rates, as detailed in the attachment, include revenue of about $460.5 million, which is a 6.5% increase over the previous year, and includes a 3% annual statutory increase, a 1.15% additional increase to the standard property tax, and 2.3% for development tax. And with the flat tax of 18 million, that brings the total recommended tax to 478.9 million. The committee also reviewed the 2022 year-end financial and performance report. We got an update on the status of several major capital projects, including the Broadway Subway, Surrey Langley SkyTrain extensions, and the rail expansion programs. And we also heard about work on operations and maintenance and rehabilitation programs for TransLink's 5 bridges. And finally, we received an update on the safety and emergency management program. So all told, a very comprehensive meeting, and thank all the AFC members for the time that they put in. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Tracy, very much. Any questions for Tracy? I know several of us are in those meetings, so we shouldn't have too many other questions. But for those who are not on that committee, is there any questions for Tracy? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to the Planning, Communities and Communication Chair report, and that's Director Reimer. So, Andrea.
Thanks, Chairperson. So the committee also met last week and reviewed 13 items, 12 of which were simply for information and only 1 action item. So briefly, the items for information were the driving down emissions report, a report on the new investment plan and overview in the 2023 work plan. We talked about bus rapid transit action plan. We had a ridership update. We received our annual reports from the 2 accessibility advisory committees, which includes TransLink Access Transit Users Advisory Committee and the Handy Dart Users Advisory Committee. And then we had Q1 updates on Indigenous relations, government relations, and public affairs. customer experience and communications and marketing update. We also had a briefing on the CEO Communities Roundtable series, which is launching this year. We had a discussion about the timing of the annual general meeting, received the annual summary of customer information, and then took action on one item, which was we recommended approval to the board of the application from the Richmond Discovery Shuttles to be approved as an independent transit service until the end of 2025 operating season. That is it for my report, Chairperson.
Andrea, thank you very much. Any questions for Andrea? I know, again, many of us were at those meetings, so don't see any questions, Andrea, so thank you. And we'll move on to the HR and Governance Committee report, and that's from Director Ross. So, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Our committee met on March 20th, and we touched a lot of material during the course. I'm going to highlight some of it, and I think the first item is kind of appropriate. We talked about the Accessible British Columbia Act, and given our first public speaker today raised issues around accessibility, and our CEO talked about our accessible navigation project, I think it's very apropos at the moment that accessibility remains high for our organization. And also there is new legislation to comply with. And I'm pleased to say that we were well advanced on a lot of our plans, and we expect to be fully complicit with the Act by September 1st this year, as anticipated in the legislation. Just to briefly touch on what that means for our customers and our staff, there's three real parts to this legislation. One is to set up internal and external committee structures to address issues around accessibility. And we have numerous internal committees that advise us and inform us on internal operations. And as Andrea just mentioned in her report, we have had the Access Transit Users Advisory Committee since 2007 and our Handy Dart Users Advisory Committee since 2019, which give us invaluable information and users of our system and accessibility challenges. So they have been a great resource to us, and we plan on using them and implementing them going forward. And we continue in all of our committees to work towards inclusion and diversity with all groups with disabilities, including our First Nations groups as well. The second part of this legislation says that we have to have plans to deal with the accessibility issues. We have numbers of plans, and we are now making sure that they've been streamlined to conform to the parts of the Act. And the third part, the third leg on the stool, is tools to receive feedback. So internally, there are a number of mechanisms, and externally, we have various ways through webs. And also in the CEO's report, you heard now our customer information, we have the ability to translate in over 300 languages, so people can include their feedback through a variety of devices. So we're pleased to report that's moving along well. The next report that we had is massive in content and wide-ranging, and that's the changes and the challenges in the workforce, which I think every group is going through right now, every employer. Attraction and retention are a priority and a challenge for everyone. TransLink has a new employee experience plan, which does have 3 strategic objectives. One is building our strong foundation, putting our people first, and investing in the future. And through the reports we've heard so far, you have heard aspects of those being woven into most of our subsidiaries and the TransLink plan. But just to put this into some kind of perspective, is sometimes we just think this as well, okay, let's just keep operating. But just in January and February of this year alone, in non-transit operator positions, we have had 15,649 applications and hired 297 people. And that's just in the first 2 months. In the same time, for our transit operators, we've had 2 job fairs with over 12,000 applications and over 709, I believe, people reporting. And it's interesting to note that TransLink and here in Greater Vancouver, we're bucking a North American trend. Most transit agencies are struggling to attract people into those positions. We are not seeing that. Don't know definitively, but we did not lay anybody off. We continued our services, and it's still being seen as an attractive place to work. So kudos to the immense amount of work that goes on attracting people to those. And while the majority of our employees within the enterprise are frontline employees, we do have a significant number who work in office-based jobs, and we are all aware of the changes going on in there with hybrid works, working from home. And I'm pleased to announce our phase 1 of our future of work, which includes options of work, has been rolled out and is being very well received within in the workplace. And finally, as you will see later in our agenda, our committee did review 2 corporate policies, our respectful workplace policy and our drug and alcohol policy, and they've been recommended for approval and will appear later on the agenda. And that does not cover everything we talked about, but is a highlights drawn from our meeting. So with that, I conclude the report, Chair.
Thank you so much, Andy, for that. Any questions for Andy on his report? All right, seeing none, then I'm going to move to Karen Horcher, who is the chair of our Information Technology Committee. So Karen?
Thank you, Chair. The Information Technology Committee held its first quarterly meeting of the year last week and received updates on a number of key items. The committee received an update on the Enterprise Resource Planning Program and discussed advancements in the ERP program, as well as next steps. We received and endorsed the annual IT program and project report, which provides additional detail for the committee on a number of IT programs and projects and gives the full suite of ongoing projects as an appendix. The committee also received an update on a number of current IT projects and matters and was briefed on work related to IT security and resiliency. Finally, the committee met with internal audit to receive reporting on projects related to IT and held an in-camera with internal audit, as is our regular practice. Chair, that is my report today, and I'm happy to take any questions. I believe you're on mute.
Sorry, a little technical difficulty getting off mute. Thank you, Karen. Any questions for Karen on her report? All right, well, seeing none, we're now going to move to item number 11 on our agenda. So we have a lot of important matters now to look at and approve. And the first report is from Christine Dacre, and this is our 2022 year-end financial and performance report. So Christine's going to do a year-end review. So Christine, please start your report. Thank you.
Thanks. Next slide, please. Our year-end financial report outlines our key accomplishments in 2022. It includes performance trends for the past 5 years and includes details of our financial results and capital projects. These stats show how we compare to 2021. And you can see the significant improvements with ridership increasing 47.9% and transit revenue increasing 33.7%. Ridership recovery has been strong. We are leading transit agencies in North America. However, the Omicron variant at the beginning of the year really impacted our ridership recovery compared to budget. By the end of the year, we were close to our original projections. 2022 really transitioned to a new normal where remote and hybrid work practices have changed the travel patterns in the region. Discretionary travel has returned at a higher rate than commuting travel. And the cost recovery ratio increased to 43.7%, but this is still well below the pre-pandemic rate of 59%. Next slide. This slide shows our operating revenue compared to budget. As I already mentioned, the ridership recovery, the impact on our transit revenue was 66.7 million unfavorable to budget. Development cost charges were also below budget due to less expenditures on eligible projects during the year. fuel tax, and parking sales tax were favorable to budget. With the budgets prepared in Q3 of 2021, the driving volumes were harder to predict. Fuel tax revenue is a declining revenue source with the increase in transition to electric vehicles, and this revenue source continues to be a concern. Next slide. Before amortization and interest, our expenditures were 54 million favorable to budget. In the bus operations, we were able to offset increases in fuel costs and material parts pricing with vacancy savings and lower access transit contracted costs as a result of the lower demand. The rail division also had savings from vacancies, lower benefit costs, and lower maintenance expenses from changes in planned work and lower contracted services. Corporate operations were 5 million favorable, mainly due to savings from vacancies, lower professional fees as a result of project deferrals, and lower roll stock as a result of lower ridership. The roads and bridges spending was 35.8 million lower than budget, mainly due to the timing of the municipality's work, resulting in lower than anticipated capital infrastructure contributions to municipalities and major road network operations and maintenance projects. Next slide. Investments or cash flows in capital projects totaled 459 million in 2022. 43% of this was spent on infrastructure projects such as the Canada Line Capstan Station, Edmonds Operations and Maintenance Center upgrades, and onboard technology upgrades. Major construction projects include SkyTrain fleet acquisitions, OMC4, which is a new operations and maintenance center for the expansion of the system, and our Operation Control Center 2. These projects are essential for the Broadway Subway and Surrey Langley SkyTrain expansions. Vehicle purchases included conventional bus replacements and expansion, along with HandyDART bus replacements. And several technology projects included a new ERP system, a new payroll, scheduling, and timekeeping system at BCRTC, and the DOMS replacement, which is CNBC's daily operator management system. Next slide. Historic financial strength and senior government relief funding allowed TransLink to maintain service at near pre-pandemic levels and lower fare rate increases to support affordability. A few main accomplishments in the year were releasing the Transport 2050 30-year strategy, the Mayor's 10-year priorities, as well as our climate action strategy and plan. We released the new Customer Experience Action Plan and launched several of its key initiatives, including the Bike Bus and Ride and Shine campaign, encouraging people to explore the region while taking transit, cycling, or walking. And we opened the new TransLink Customer Service Center at Waterfront Station. This new facility is 3 times larger and able to serve twice as many customers as the facility at Stadium Chinatown Station, while also being connected to all modes of transit and popular bus routes. I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Christine. So do we have any questions for Christine on her report? This is a big bit of information for us. I know we've all been looking at it over the past week. You know, Christine, when you were talking about the growth in ridership, you know, you look at the numbers of 50% from 2021, and I think back to Andy talking about not laying anybody off. And then I remind myself in 2020 how uncertain the world was for all of us. And so it's a reflective time for me to look back and think about how things have evolved and how rewarding it is to see the decisions that were made and where we are now with our path and being able to grow the system. And I know we couldn't have done that without the support of the federal and provincial governments. So I just want to, you know, I'm sure you're very appreciative because you know how challenging the numbers are with TransLink and how the budgets are difficult to balance these days with our ridership still down from where we used to be. So it's just an important piece.
Thank you.
So with that, then, that was for information. Now we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 12, which is the audited financial statements. We do have a decision to make here. We have a resolution that that needs to be passed. So Christine, why don't you move to that part of our report?
Sure. I'll just mention, because the financial statements are all in your packages. Our external auditors, KPMG, audited the consolidated financial statements and concluded that they present fairly in all material respects the consolidated financial position of the authority as at December 31st, 2022.
Great. And so Tracy, do you have anything else you'd like to add to Christine's report?
No, just happy to move the statements for approval.
All right. So we have the resolution in our package in item number 12.0, which the resolution reads, the audit committee recommends for the board of directors to approve the audited consolidated financial statements attached to this report and authorize the board chair and the finance and audit committee chair to sign the approved 2022 audited consolidated financial statements. So Tracy's moved that resolution. Do we have a seconder for that resolution? Any further discussions or questions? Thank you very much. Any further discussions or questions on this? All right, so hearing none, all in favor of approving as presented. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, so Christine, you're still not going anywhere because now we have the statutory annual report to present.
Yes, thank you. This report is required by our legislation, which shows our actual results compared to what was in the 2022 year of the 2022 investment plan. And for the most part, the investment plan amounts are the same as our budget, as the budget was the base used when developing the investment plan. The report also includes a summary of customer complaints, customer satisfaction survey process, amendments to articles of the authority, summary of the date, time, and outcome of TransLink's board meetings, the fare collection bylaw, a summary of tickets issued and collected, and a summary of the development cost charges.
Great, thank you. Tracy, any further bits to add on this?
I think it's self-explanatory.
Okay, thank you. So again, we have a resolution in our package that proposes that the board would approve the 2022 statutory annual report mandated by our act as presented in attachment 1 to our report and authorizes the release of the 2022 statutory annual report to the Mayor's Council on Regional Transportation. So can I have a mover? Thank you, Tracy, and a seconder. Thank you, Alan, and all in favor? Thank you very much. You notice I didn't ask for too many questions on that because this is a bit of a sleeper of a report. So it's kind of one of my, there's not too many riveting things in there, but there's a lot of information and much appreciated that it is all pulled together. So the next item on our agenda is item number 14, and that is our property tax bylaw and replacement tax bylaw. So back to you, Christine, and I think Olga's helping you with this. Is she not?
Yep, she's always helping me.
I know that. But I think we might hear her voice this time.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Welcome, Olga.
Next slide, please. Okay, so the 2023 property tax revenues are expected to be $478.9 million. The overall impact of the 2023 tax for an average residential property will be an increase of approximately $15 over the prior year. The actual rates charged to property owners will decrease over the previous year as both the number and the value of properties has increased. And there's further detail of the breakdowns of the two resolutions. They have to be separate resolutions for the property tax and the replacement tax because they are separate in our legislation. So I'll turn it back to the chair for any questions.
Thank you, Christine. Tracy, anything to add on here? All right. So I'm not going to read these resolutions to you because you do have them in your package and they're quite lengthy, but we need two different decisions, as Christine said. So Tracy, did you want to move that?
I'll move it.
Okay, so we'll move the property tax bylaw first. There's two parts to it. You'll see in your package. So Tracy's moved it, a seconder for that one. Thank you, Andy. And all in favor? Thank you very much. All right, now we're going to move to the replacement tax bylaw. And Tracy will move that one. I see her hand up already. And Harpinder, I know you've been trying to second them. So are you okay to second this next one? Thank you. And all in favor? Thank you all very much. All right. So that moves us on to item number 15, which is our transit tariff amendment. Again, Christine is here to do that presentation. And this is item number 15 in your package with several attachments to it. So Christine, go ahead.
Thank you. Next slide, please. We understand the very real cost of living pressures being faced by Metro Vancouver residents. However, as household expenses have increased with inflation, so have TransLink's expenses. Fares are an important part of the revenue that pays for our transit system. As you all know, fares were frozen in 2020 and then kept low at 2.3% as outlined in the Safe Restart program with the province to keep them affordable. Last May, the board and the Mayor's Council approved the 2022 investment plan, which sets out what the fare increase will be. Public consultation took place in spring of 2022. Prior to this approval, and we are now asking to enact the bylaws. The provincial government's recent stabilization funding will keep us operational until 2025. And we're grateful to the province for this funding to ensure that our transit services remain intact. That provincial funding included the assumption that we were raising fares by 2.3% this year. The funding helped us avoid having to implement much higher fare increases and keep our fares affordable. Next slide. This graph shows the fare rates for the last 6 years compared to the BC CPI rates. The red bar is the BC CPI, and the gray bar is the actual fare increases. As I've mentioned, during the pandemic, you can see that the 2020 fare increases were canceled. In 2021 and 2022, fare increases were kept low at 2.3%. Starting in late 2022 and into this year, we have seen unprecedented rates of inflation. So it is important to note that this scheduled fare increase of 2.3% is almost half the rate of inflation in BC and is less than half the national rate of inflation. And you can note that for 2023 on this graph, we're showing the forecasted inflation data. Next slide. To put the scheduled 2.3% average increase in perspective, fares will increase by only 5 to 10 cents per trip for the vast majority of customers. Adult cash fares will increase 5 to 15 cents, depending on the number of zones traveled. Adult stored value will only increase 5 to 10 cents. And adult monthly passes increase by $2.35 to $4.25. For youth and seniors, also known as concession fares, for both cash and stored value, the increase is only 5 to 10 cents. And concession monthly passes only increase $1.35. Our children 12 and under continue to be free. And I also want to share that even after this increase, TransLink has some of the lowest fares of all major transit agencies in Canada. For example, TransLink's one zone cash fare of $3.15, which is enough to pay for any bus trip or a short SkyTrain trip, is less than Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Edmonton, Ottawa, Winnipeg, Hamilton, and Quebec City. Thank you, Chair. I'll turn it back to you.
Christine, thank you. And thank you for those comments right at the end on the comparatives. I think that was really useful in understanding where we fit kind of in the national piece. So Andrea.
Thanks, Chairperson. Thank you, Christine. I did have a question in light of, there's been some discussion in, well, at the Vancouver School Board and perhaps a little bit further about, in light of the stabilization funding from the province, if it would be possible not to raise the concession fares in this round. And I'm curious as to what the impact would be of not, if all the other fares were raised, but not the concession fares. I feel like I'm not asking this well, but hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned, the funding that we received from the province included the assumption that these increases were happening. So by them giving us that funding doesn't create any excess funding by any means. And it was also based on our estimates as to what our financial situation would be through to 2025. And there's still a lot of uncertainty, in the years ahead as to what inflation is doing and the cost of other supply chain issues and whatnot. So we don't have any extra money to cover this. For the whole concession category, for just 1 year, it would be about $1.5 million for the concession category for this increase. But I'll say that's just 1 year. It compounds year over year. And then it also puts our equilibrium of our fare structure as far as what the adult fare is and the concession fare. Our concession fare compared to the regular fare is already a 33% discount. So it is heavily discounted already.
Okay, that's very helpful. And so, I mean, essentially, it would create a budget hole, and the only real way to fix a budget hole is to cut costs somewhere. That's a fair summary.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Andrea. Any other questions for Christine on this? I know this has been widely reported in the media. There's been lots of conversation and dialogue at our board table about this. I think that when the fare increase and the funding came from the province, those two were intending to work together. And that's really what we're being asked to do, is to match up the second half of this piece to provide kind of certainty going forward for the transit system. So with that, I see no further questions. Tracy, are you going to make this motion as well?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So why don't I just read the motion so everybody has it clearly in their mind. It is in item 15.0 in their package that the board introduces and reads a first, second, and third time from our Act, bylaw number 148-2/2023. Attach this report as attachment 1, effective July 1st, 2023, reconsiders and finally adopts as part of our Act, bylaw number 148/2023. So we have a mover, a seconder. Karen, did you have your hand up? Yeah, thank you. And all in favor? Thank you all very much. So Christine, that is complete. And you don't have anything else to do now. I think you're finished. Thank you to both you and Olga for all your work. I know that the end of the year, it's kind of like you put a bow on that year and then you're fastly running into the next year. So anyway, thank you all both very much, and for your whole team. Appreciate all the work. And I know that the auditors, I think as Tracy reported, gave a clean report and said what great cooperation and confidence they have in the work that you and your team do. So thank you. Thanks. All right, so we're going to move now to item number 16 on our agenda, which is the the respectful workplace policy. We have a report from Mark Jefferson, and this is in your package. It's item number 16. And do I see Mark here?
Chair Cunningham, Mark is not currently in the meeting, and we're working to bring him on as fast as we can.
Okay. Well, maybe Andy, do you want, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. Thank you.
I was just going to suggest, Andy, did you have anything to say, or we can move into our consent agenda while we're waiting for, how do we do our consent agenda, Jennifer? That seem like a reasonable thing for us to do?
Sure.
Okay, so we have a consent agenda here. It's item number 18. Are there any items in the consent agenda people would like to ask any questions in regards to, or is everyone comfortable with a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? In here is the accountability report, which Kevin reported in his remarks. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, it's a great report, great picture of Kevin right at the beginning. And but it's got lots of information that kind of talks all about what we're doing and all the different things that are going on in TransLink. So seeing no concerns in regards to the consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Thank you very much, Jen, and a seconder. Thank you, Andy. And all in favor? Thank you very much. All right. So have we found Mark yet?
Not yet, Chair. So I'm happy to speak to.
Okay, why don't you do
best
that?
as I can, or with Kevin, and we can certainly take any questions.
Okay, sounds good. And we have a resolution to deal with here on this agenda. Okay, so go ahead.
So for the TransLink Respectful Workplace Policy, this was a policy that was updated for the TransLink Workplace. It has some more housekeeping changes that were incorporated and was reviewed and recommended by the Human Resources and Governance Committee for the board's approval. I won't go into detail. I think the attachments were there that identified the changes. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Andy, did you have anything else you wanted to add in regards to that as the chair of the committee?
No, just to say that this is part of our annual review of our policies to make sure that they're current and up to date. And if you wish, Chair, on behalf of the committee, I'll move the proposed resolution for adoption.
That'd be great. Thank you, Andy. And a seconder for that? Thank you, Tracy, Allen. All in favor? And that's carried and approved. Thank you very much. And let's move on to the drug and alcohol policy.
Thank you, Chair. I see that Mark Jefferson's just joining, but in the meantime, while he gets ready, the TransLink Drug and Alcohol Policy, as part of its annual review, was recently reviewed and updated to incorporate a few changes. Again, this was reviewed at the Human Resources and Governance Committee. I see Mark's with us, so maybe what I will do is maybe turn it over to you, Mark, just to touch on the highlights of the changes to the drug and alcohol policy.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everybody.
I'm sorry, Mark, we're a little ahead of schedule, so you probably weren't as ready as you could have been.
No problem. Thank you, Lorraine.
Okay.
So let me drop into the drug and alcohol policy too, because there's two policies here to present to you this morning. The drug and alcohol policy was last reviewed in 2019, so it's been 4 years since that time. A lot has changed in the employment sector, as we're all aware, during the pandemic timeframe. So just as a reference, the policy is intended to provide the public and customers a safe, reliable, and efficient transit system, to continue to establish clear expectations for both employees and contractors' conduct for the employer's expectations regarding drug and alcohol use in the workplace. It is to support those with substance abuse issues also and get them the support that they require. The summary of the changes over the past 3 years in the version that you're looking at right now is clarity and moving towards under the influence as a term. This note has been captured in our definitions in the glossary at the back of the policy. We're moving away from the actual abuse or impairment phrasing to under the influence. The second area is workplace must now consider the expectations and considerations of a hybrid work employment setting. So obviously prior in 2019, we did not have employees working in a hybrid space, so we've captured that. That is also captured in your glossary in the appendix. The third area is clarity regarding the use of prescription and over-the-counter drugs. So these have also been captured and updated into this policy to provide clarity and expectations for employees. And the fourth and final area is support for those employees experiencing addiction issues. As an employer, we want to make sure that our employees are safe, they're productive, they're healthy, and they're being supported where they're required and needed. Those are the updates regarding this policy.
Thank you, Mark. Went through extensively during the committee. Andy, anything further to add to that? I see Jen has a question.
I don't think I have anything to add, and at the appropriate time, I'll make the recommendation.
Great. Jen.
Just a quick note of appreciation for the responsiveness, Mark, to the committee's comments and providing the clarifications that we asked for. So really appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into that, and happy to jump ahead of Andy and make the make the motion for acceptance.
All right, I'll let Andy second the motion then.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you very much. And all in favor of the amended policy as presented. Thank you. Well, with that, board members, it appears that we have completed our agenda for the day. We've gone through the consent agenda. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you all very much. So we'll see you for the second half of a little bit later. All right, so that concludes our meeting for the day.